That's when everyone goes quiet. Okay. Okay, no one's, okay. So announcements and updates? I think,
I do not have anything for that item.
JD, do you have any announcements? No? No.
Surprise, no.
Okay. Chuck?
No.
Member Elizabeth?
No, ma'am.
No. And member Deb Pastor, do you have any updates? Nope, okay. The only thing I have is that the city of Prescott is going to be kicking off their general plan update. We've already kind of started, but the public meetings will be starting next year for public outreach. 2023 is our year of public outreach, we're calling it, for Plan Prescott. So we will have a lot of stuff in the paper about meetings, and we'll be creating a website. So as we move along, I will bring information to provide for their email list to get out of how to participate in upcoming events and surveys and everything else we plan on doing this next year. And I'm the lead on it, so anyone can get a hold of us, and we'll have an email address set up in the next couple of months on the website.
I just thought of something related to the Prescott Comprehensive Plan. The county is currently updating their comprehensive plan, and we're now in the 60-day comment period. And there are some really, really important items regarding the environment that are in that comprehensive plan. And I would just urge everyone to comment on that Yavapai County Comprehensive Plan.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Can I ask a question of you, Madam Chair? So John Pratt did email, and he's got an appointment that he wasn't able to reschedule, so he's not here today. But he did offer his opinion about widening through the Dells on 89. Is there any update that you can provide from the city's perspective on that endeavor towards planning and study efforts?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next, CYMPO updates. Any?
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry I'm not there. I just had a meeting wrap up and I'm over in my office, so my apologies for not joining you. Just a couple announcements to follow up with what Tammy was saying about the Prescott General Plan. You know, CYMPO is definitely looking forward to helping out however we can, Tammy. So loop us in, and we're happy to contribute as it relates to transportation and the general plan. Number two, carbon reduction funds. So we've received some new pots of funding, which is good news. We've previously talked about the federal infrastructure bill, of which we're essentially in the first year of a multi-year bill. And what this group and we have talked about as staff is there are many new opportunities, and we've received one of them being the carbon reduction funds. CYMPO just received just under $200,000. I always throw the number off and I look to Allison. I think it's like 185, is about right, Allison? So 185,000 a year for the next 5 years. Lindsay and I are working on understanding the program. The money came into the bank before we even knew the details about it, but as it probably indicates in the title, is the money is intended to be used to help with carbon reduction. We have CYMPO staff has been working with Dan Cherry and his staff, and there is a possible joint project between the city of Prescott and Yavapai County that CYMPO is part of those discussions, and it relates to some of the trail improvements on Pioneer Parkway. So if that's a project where we can help with the trailhead development between the city of Prescott and Yavapai County, we may be able to use those funds for that purpose. And I just put that out there to this group that as Lindsay and I understand how these monies are able to be used, we're happy to participate with ideas from EMAC of projects and activities. Again, 185,000 a year for some things doesn't go very far, but we're happy to contribute that towards carbon reduction and improving of the overall environment in our region. So just want to put that out there for the group. We're also doing what we're calling a project assessment, and this ties again to the opportunities in this infrastructure bill. There is some existing grants that are available that have been revised, and then there is a whole host of new types of grants that are available. For the purposes of this particular group, again, there has been one heck of a shot in the arm for things related to the environment, the ecosystem, of which is the prime mission of this group. And any projects that either directly or even in some ways indirectly relate to that. All that to say, it's even for seasoned staff like myself, it's like drinking out of a fire hydrant of trying to scramble and see what projects do we have that might line up best with grant opportunities. So what we've done is we've hired a consultant to help us facilitate this. And where we're at in this activity is we're now going back to the cities, the towns, and the county, and we're asking for them to go ahead and submit 3 projects from their areas that we would then go ahead and evaluate as to their competitiveness with federal grants. So they're going to be working with Lindsay to submit up to 3 projects. And again, these projects to everyone in the room can cover a pretty broad range from sidewalks, from trails to roadways, and they can be on the, if you will, more on the lower dollar amount end, if you will, to the higher dollar amount. And what we've tried to tell the cities of the towns and the county is what we're seeing is the things that are more competitive, again, are the multimodal things. It doesn't have to be, but if it's multimodal, being more than just vehicles, that's definitely a plus. If it's environment, if it's helping the environment, that's a plus. If it's to communities that have been neglected in the past for a number of reasons, that's a plus. So again, and I see Dan in the room, I'll use Yavapai County as the example. So Dan and his staff, they're more than welcome to submit whatever 3 projects they want. We're just trying to give them a heads up. And then what we'll do is we'll evaluate those 3 projects in the county, and we'll try and do as much homework for Dan and his staff as we can to say, of these 3 projects, here's the grants that we've identified could line up best with these projects. And then we want to give Dan and his staff all the criteria that breaks it down and analyzes why that particular project might compete well, what they need to know going into it, what is the parameters, the rules, the guidelines, what's the match. So what CYMPO is hoping to do is we're trying to not only analyze, but put them in the best possible position then to pursue the grants. So at this point, I want to be clear that CYMPO will not be doing the grant application itself, but instead we would turn it over to Yavapai County, Prescott Valley, and so forth. Say, we've analyzed it for you. Here's our recommendations. Here's our data. And then it would be up to, essentially, again, using the county as an example, for Dan, his staff, and I would assume the Board of Supervisors to provide some approvals, then to go forward. But we're again trying to do the best we can to analyze the opportunities and set up the jurisdictions in order to pursue these. So I hope that, let me pause there if there's questions or comments on that. It was a long explanation, but some good things could come out of it.
Yeah, so the county's gonna come up with 3 plans. The city's gonna come up with 3 plans. And we're hoping to go to someone like Prescott Valley or Chino and get 3 plans, correct?
Correct, Chuck. Yeah, each area will be given the opportunity. So Yavapai County, Prescott Valley, Dewey, Humboldt, and Chino Valley will be able to submit up to 3 projects for us to review. We haven't given them many more parameters outside of that, Chuck. So again, if they want, you know, all roads, they can do that. If they want, you know, some other aspect, they can do that. But that's what we've given them so far.
Well, I was just wondering, if the EMAC should, review all these and give our comment on all these plans, or have a little subcommittee and come up with our own 3 plans. That's kind of a question to the whole committee, really.
Yeah, and if I could just offer an initial response and then let you discuss it amongst yourselves, that, you know, I would be happy, Lindsay and I would be happy to share the projects that each of these areas submit, you know, and then EMAC can add some additional comments to the projects, you know, looking again to who we're asking for, you know, Dan in his area, they're going to have some understanding of a number of parameters, you know, not only the politics, but the greater community support, the need. And I guess that's where we're looking to each of the representatives from these areas to, you know, to dream, but within reason, if that's fair, Dan. I don't want to speak for you, but you know, he's going to attempt to offer something from his staff that is probably a reasonable ask for us to evaluate. Is that about fair, Dan?
Thanks, Vinny. I do want to add clarification whether ADOT was given a chance to take part in this program.
They were not, though they absolutely can. The survey just closed, meaning the call for projects that Kittleson had just put out. And so, Vinny, I haven't had a chance to look at how many of our members have submitted 3 projects. Phyllis Hugel, the program project manager on that, was open to considering more, you know, as long as it fits in the scope and the timeline and the budget. So I think we probably could consider ADOT, and then I also had the same thought that you mentioned. What could EMAC submit if there's, you know, room for it to our efforts?
So if I may, is, you know, it has to be up to the representative agency to actually want to pursue these things. EMAC can come up with a list of ideas, and certainly that's encouraged. But if they maybe suggest a wildlife crossing or something like that to pursue over, say, State Route 69, ADOT has to be willing to prioritize that to put that forward as a grant application for this IIJA money. And I'm going to say that if there is limitations as to how many applications an agency can make, ADOT may be limited to, you know, say 3 or something like that. It would be within their entire jurisdiction statewide. You have to make sure that it comes up towards the top if ADOT was willing to pursue at their local district office level, but then also have support from the state level, because most of these will come with some matching requirements. So there's an expectation there needs to be funding that comes with that grant application, or funding for that application. And it generally costs money to apply for these dollars. You have to put together a very high quality competitive grant application, which can often cost tens of thousands of dollars to put together some application that is going tens of thousands. And you know, because if you're just filling out a form and submitting it, it's not going to. There are other agencies that are going to put together booklets and, you know, 8x10 glossy photos and things like that to support their application. The other thing I'll say is and one of the things Vinny didn't touch on is something that makes a grant application competitive is having somebody that has multi-jurisdictional support. So if you can get something that say incorporated community and the county and the ADOT all are supportive of together, and they each maybe kick in a little money on it to try to, get some high dollar improvement funded within the CYMPO region, that stands a better chance than something that is just one single agency pursuing something that is their benefit only. So you just throwing this out there just for people to keep in mind. I think our member agencies are probably interested in what EMAC think about things if that's an opportunity. Anything further on that, Vinny?
No, nothing at all further. I appreciate what you added to it. I'm going to go back to Chuck's point. In this particular thing, unless we can figure something else different, again, I think the discussion needs to be fluid. I think it needs to be recognizing the TAC members, if you will, which are essentially the representatives from each of those jurisdictions. I would like to believe that Dan and the rest of the TAC have an awareness with the EMAC of some possible projects. And I guess where I'm dancing around your point, Chuck, is the timeline. I'm just thinking out loud. It's pretty tight. So as much as I would love to encourage EMAC to create a subgroup to come up with projects, it just the timeline's too tight, and instead would recommend EMAC directly working with the TAC members now in this conversation. And that's why I think possibly the better way of doing it is the projects that are being selected, we could bring those back to the EMAC to let you know what those projects are. It's not a perfect answer to your question. I appreciate what you're wanting to do, but I'm a way to do it.
I'm a little concerned that we only meet quarterly. And something like this to review other documents, other plans, come up with new ideas, throw them around, banter, like you're saying, takes some time. And I think in our group, the way we want to do stuff, we can't sit at a meeting like this and review all those. We're going to have a special subcommittee that can meet more often and more fluidly. So I guess I'm kind of headed after what you just said, is asking the committee if we want to come up with a task force or subcommittee to review plans and ideas and stuff like that.
Since that's not on the agenda, that's not something we can vote on today. That's something we can put on a future
The next
agenda.
agenda.
Well, my frustration is that now you're saying, oh gee, there isn't enough time, time's limited for us to get something together. We keep hearing we're too late to do anything, and yet we meet quarterly when I'm willing to meet monthly if we have to. The other thing is that for all the time that EMAC has been on board, and Dan has been one of the ones to point out that yes, we needed to hire someone if we wanted to go forward with grants, that the county has someone who has grant writing, the city has grant writing. Are we duplicating that and then shortchanging EMAC? I was so excited to have someone come on and actually be able to work with us, because as far as I know, none of us are skilled in grant writing, and it is an art, and it does involve a lot of cohesive planning, and we're all for that, but it's sounding again like, oh, you're too late, and I'm really frustrated.
Yeah,
Well,
we need to
also,
get more
so just to kind of keep us on track, we can't just apply for things as an EMAC group. We have to go through the TAC and the board before we could even apply or review other projects. So they're giving us possibly the opportunity, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vinny, to review the applications that are submitted to possibly get some feedback onto those projects. Is that what may be able to happen?
Well, and let me add clarification, because and I guess JD and everyone, you can fill whatever you want to fill. I guess I'm confused on why there would be frustration in that. What CYMPO is attempting to do is everybody has these opportunities, and we're trying to help the county out, Prescott and everybody else out, to narrow down the conversation. We're in this boat where there's many opportunities out there, and we're trying to see, as opposed to, I don't know, evaluating 20 different grants and a whole list of projects, we're trying to somewhat quickly narrow down by looking to Dan and his staff and Prescott and so forth. We're trying to narrow it down so that some real conversations can happen. That's what we're attempting to do. And we're just in this process. I don't know that EMAC or anyone's missing out on anything. I guess I'm giving you an update as to how we're trying to assist Yavapai County, Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Dewey Humboldt to narrow down some priority projects they have. So CYMPO is attempting to help out, is what we're attempting to do. So I guess JD and group, I'm sharing what we're attempting to do. The responsibility still remains the same. After we give this recommendation, Yavapai County could say, sorry, we don't have the capacity, Prescott and CYMPO. So I guess help me out, JD. I'm missing where the frustration is by us helping narrow down possible projects so that Yavapai County can pursue these opportunities. What am I missing there?
I guess what I'm saying is that it's great that you're supporting all the CYMPO entities, but it's at the cost of providing what CYMPO has been asking for ever since, or EMAC has been asking for ever since we've been created. We are woefully deficient in skill to go after some of the areas that we would like to. We become almost like a farce in the community for not doing anything. And we finally get a grant writer on board. And to me, that was really exciting. And I was looking forward to figuring out what we can do. And granted, we have to go through TAC, we have to go through the executive board. But it was finally I saw a light at the end of the tunnel that we were going to be able to do something meaningful. And now that resource is going to be used for helping other organizations or governmental sources that already have grant writers on board. And yes, isn't the TAC the purpose of that, to look at the various projects that each of the member agencies are putting forward? I just think it's a duplication, and again, you know, the fact that we meet quarterly is very, very frustrating if there's something that's on the agenda. And I know that this Sundown corridor is, I mean, there's not money for it, but yet we're doing planning for it, and there's an awful lot of reaction to it in the community. But we need help in looking for some things that would be meaningful in the meantime, you know, and to work with conjunction with the things that are coming up to TAC or that are coming up being presented by the cities and the county, so that we can have input in that, not just, I don't know, I just don't feel like we're having any input on anything right now.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly. The point is, we need to have a group that's more formed for this kind of activity, where there's several different localities or jurisdictions that want to have projects, and that we can, in a timely manner, review them, talk to other people, see what's going on, get involved, and make some meaningful conversation and contribution. I think at a quarterly level, we're not getting that.
Well, the
Or-
idea when we went quarterly is at the time, there were no projects, we were waiting, we had COVID and everything.
Okay,
So a lot of things were put on hold, now that we have more projects such as the 69 that we're going to get to, so we're kind of jumping the gun here. That as we move forward and review these projects, we could meet more often. At the time, we went quarterly because there was nothing for us to review at the time.
Okay,
So we were
let's-
waiting for these projects to come forward or see what came forward from the CYMPO board and the TAC. And then start, now we're at the beginning, right where we want to be, at the beginning of these processes, to be part of them. So now, if needed, with the consultants and such, we can meet more often.
Okay, so do we want to meet as a task force or do we
So
want to meet as the whole
We would
group?
meet as a whole committee,
The
but
whole
let's
committee.
move on with the agenda, because that was supposed to just be an update, and we have these agendized. So let's move forward so we can keep this meeting going, because some of us have timelines.
I think item 9
Well,
will
Yeah,
address
and
some
we
of
have,
your-
these are on
This
the
is an
agenda.
important aspect of our committee is interacting with all the other communities and other jurisdictions. I mean, what Vinny has come up with is so fantastic and juicy that, you know, we want to get our teeth in it. And
And that's something
I'm
we
glad
could
you
put,
mentioned that we can now do
Yeah.
more meetings than quarterly.
So we're kind of getting out of, because it's not agendized, so we're kind of surpassing just an
Well, the
update.
update,
So what we can do to keep the meeting going, that we can get that on a future, the next agenda, and then
I think
this-
item 9 may,
and that, yeah, exactly.
I promise
Nine.
you'll feel better with that.
Yeah.
you can take action.
oh,
Yeah.
okay,
That's
yeah.
why I'm trying to get this kind of going.
yeah, okay, no,
So
I'm
we
good with
have-
that. If
we
you
have
want to do
one.
that, that's fine. I don't want to wait a quarter.
Tammy?
Yes,
Yeah, I'll go ahead and wrap this up, and I appreciate Chuck's adjectives that this is, what would you call it, juicy, and what was it, Chuck?
Juicy.
To me, that's good. If we can do anything that
It's
catches
juicy.
interest like that, that's exciting. JD, I hear your frustration. I hear your passion. You know, we're going to continue to work with you. I get it. There was a number of things you listed in there that I'm happy to follow up. For the sake of this meeting, we'll go ahead and move on. I would say this, JD, that those things that are still in place are still in place, that people, organizations that have grant writers, that's still the thing. We're trying to help Yavapai County out, Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Dewey, Humboldt. If they have grant writers, they're working, we're trying to make recommendations and say, look, you want to, and Dan Prisick asked this question in the chat, what are the grant dollar ranges? They range anywhere from thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. So whatever Yavapai County wants to submit, we're going to review, and then it's going to be up to Yavapai County what they do from there. If they have a grant writer, that's still in place. We're trying to do a little extra work on their end. You all have the ability to work directly with these cities and towns to make sure it's on their radar. So anyway, I do feel I'm a little bit confused, but we'll do some more follow-up and clarification, because out of all items to be frustrated about, I would think this would not be one, because all I'm seeing is where we're trying to help out. So it's a little bit of a head scratcher for me, but we'll follow up a little bit later on that. So stay tuned. And was there anything else, Lindsay, you needed me to cover on the updates?
Vinny, if you don't mind, I would like to, if you don't have it in front of you, may I just present the ridership numbers for the YAV?
Sure.
The YAV in Prescott Valley, the micro transit system. I believe we're in week 6 now. They are in week 6. I have nothing to do except a cheerleader. I wanted to report that there were 21 total trips for the first week, an average of 4.2 a day. Week 2, 58 trips that week, 11.6 average per day. Week 3, 111 total trips, 22.6 per day. Week 4, 121 total trips, 24.2 trips per day. And then week 5, 144 total trips, 28.8 trips per day. So we're seeing an increase of like 575% from the first week to the latest, but a very steady increase. So that's huge for our area.
thank you for that. That's great. Is there any more updates? CYMPO updates? No, okay. Next, consideration and possible action to approve the June 27th, 2022 meeting minutes of the EMAC. Are there any discussion or possible changes?
Just a quick Madam Chair, just a quick question. I was unable to attend that meeting. We were on vacation. I was just looking at it here on the request for action page, and it says with noted changes. Do we know what those noted changes are?
That's only if the EMAC has noted changes.
Noted
to make
changes
in the
to add.
motion.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or changes? If not, could we get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the June 27th, 2022 meeting minutes for EMAC.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
First and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. So next on the agenda is the review and discussion of the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report and Environmental Overview of Project. Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm behind the camera. Let me come back out. So there's been lots of updates with the Sundog Connector. The latest newsletter should be coming out today or tomorrow. We're just finalizing that final draft. On September 7th, we had our first open house event, so that it was a public open house rather than like a meeting where somebody comes to a lecture. So it was very interactive. Folks got to come in and move through space and interact with our consulting staff as well as some municipal staff who was there to answer questions. And so what the first public meeting was to gather purpose and need for the design concept report. Remember that there's no funding for construction. This is a conceptual design. It's not an engineering level design. Those are steps that we have to get to before construction could even be considered. And so the purpose of the open house was to get public engagement. There was there were 93 people who signed into the event as members of the public, though we do know there were more there who we probably weren't able to snag before they walked past the sign-in desk. We had really, really great participation. It was at Eastspire Sports. And so I've got a few things to put up on the screen to share with everybody.
When was this held?
This was on September 7th. It was from 4 to 6 p.m. I think some who are in the room here today were able to join us. The presentation board, what we kind of called the storyboard that you can sort of see here in the pictures. There is one that I'd like to share with you here today. Let me get that pulled up. And let me see if I can figure out how to zoom out. So this was the environmental board. Now remember that the design concept report comes with an environmental overview. That's not nearly a full NEPA review. NEPA is something that would come in when we do an engineering level design for construction. And it would be a lot more robust than what an environmental overview is. But I did want to stop here and offer what we're talking about for the Sundog Connector. So as I mentioned, the public open house was to gather purpose and need from everybody in the public so that the AECOM team can start to design the concept to build alternatives for us to consider. There's 2 build alternatives plus a no build. What happens if the vote is for a no build? What happens to our overall transportation network once that happens? So the modeling and analysis is done by AECOM. And they're working now with the input from the public, from us, from the TAC, to develop the actual design concepts for us to review between now and February or March when we have our next public open meeting. It was important for us to get input from the public. There were a lot of people there who did not want to tell us what they might want to see in a roadway because they thought that meant that they were voting essentially for a roadway. But it's important to know that if this were to go through against your wishes, wouldn't you like it to at least have some of the features that you want to see in it? So you'll see here some of the main issues. A lot of folks are asking us for to consider sound walls, to consider the ebb and flow of the natural environment, to tuck the road, into to landscape more. Very concerned about the visual aesthetics of it, of course, and what that would look like. But this group is here because we're concerned about the ecosystem mitigation and connectivity. So let me see, I think I have another thing to show you. What's happening next is the stack. So the Sundog Technical Advisory Committee is meeting again on November 9th. It's a virtual only meeting. The AECom team, based on the input from the public, will present draft design criteria, typical sections, which is an engineering term that if you have questions about, we might need to get Dan Cherry to help us, and roadway alignments. So the next public meeting will hopefully have a little bit more for us to consider, but we as a stack, that's consisted of the TAC plus some staff at the municipal partner levels, as well as some community members like Dan Prijik and Gary Anderson from Yavapai Hills. And so together we will have already seen some of the design concepts that AECom will present to the public in February or March. It won't be no surprise, and it shouldn't be something that's completely against our wishes and the community's wishes, because we're working so closely together that there shouldn't be a wide discrepancy. So after that, the next stakeholder meeting, which is a lot more broad than the stack. A lot of you in this room are part of the stakeholder group. Joanne with Save the Dells, and then the Sundog Disconnect group has asked to be part of the stakeholder group. There are also a lot of other community affinity groups, sportsmen, like equestrian sportsmen, the bike and ped technical advisory committees, as well as city staff. So we do hope that it's well-rounded to your liking. The next stakeholder meeting will be scheduled in December. That will be in person. We're working to secure the date and meeting space, probably with input from folks on the 9th. So you might not see the date of that until we are able to talk to the staff and get that scheduled. Let's see. Those are the two things coming up for Sundog Connector. What else, what questions can I answer, Madam Chair? Members of the EMAC? Yep, okay. Sorry. No comment online, okay. So the Sundog Connector is scheduled to commence in September of 2023. We scheduled the SR 69 master corridor plan, as we'll talk about in the next item, to kind of go in concurrence with that, so that our decision makers have both items to consider and review. So beyond that, that is our update for the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report project. Madam Chair, I welcome any questions.
So I'm guessing the question is going to be from the group, when are we going to be able to see and be able to start commenting on and providing input for wildlife crossings?
I would say at the staff meeting is when we'll first get our first chance to see some presentation materials that we can sink our teeth into as a committee, and starts providing guidance and advise them on what we'd like to see towards our interests. I also have more on item 9 to talk about in that as well.
There's a comment now from Dan Prijik. Was there any wildlife concerns to be addressed by EMAC approaches yet?
So at the stack meeting, I'm guessing they're going to have like some proposed corridors maybe at that time, or?
Yeah, so it'll be the draft design criteria. So yeah, it'll be our first official flavor at all of what this could look like and where we might want to start providing guidance.
And then probably right after the staff meeting, we can have an EMAC meeting to see those and start looking at it, maybe.
I don't see why not.
I go for that, yeah.
Madam Chair, you have a comment?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for taking my question. I'm still not clear about how the no build option comes into play.
Yeah.
And what that really means and how that is evaluated.
Sure. So we'll actually address that at the staff meeting, Joanne. I don't know if you got the invitation for that, but I will make sure that you have. So the no build, that's a great question. And it was also raised at our executive board meeting last week. So Rich Kaplan also had the same question. He really wants to know more than just, we're gonna provide a no build option and show what the road network could look like. I would like AECom to present to us that information at the staff meeting. But it's important for us to know, especially myself for my own edification, but because that's such a popular concern of the stakeholder group of what the no build option looks like. I don't know, Dan, if you have any.
So, my experience with past grants has been, such that when you have federal funding come in, there's an expectation that the no build option is being carried through the process while you're doing design alternatives or design concepts. And to ultimately select that, I think would probably be a decision by our board, our executive board, as to, at the conclusion of this, if they say we want to not only just shelve the project, but actually make a selection that we will, with a formal vote, that we will never consider this project in the future. That would be the way that it would kind of be written in stone. Many times there are studies done and ideas floated out there and public, input taken. Yet the upshot of it all is, okay, we've done this, now let's put it on the shelf. That has no funding for construction, but some different board or some different larger organization may pick it up in the future and decide to dust it off and perhaps have further discussion with that. So there's really kind of this question as to whether the no build is actually formally taken action upon, or whether there's just a recommended alternative, and that alternative is to build something, or that alternative is to not build anything that is.
Which really doesn't mean that it won't ever be built.
Right.
That's just that for the public to have comment, if the subdivisions get developed, they have to build the road, final phase of High Hills. So they'll just go through their own process with no public input or no public participation and design a road. So this is if it's taking federal funding or any help from the region to help build the road. But if Yavapai Hills in their last days decides that they're gonna move forward with construction, or whoever buys that property, they can come in and design and build a road with no public input. So just.
And Madam Chairwoman, if I can.
Yes.
So to springboard off Tammy's point, and for Joanne and everyone there too, I think this is so important to understand. There's definitely two things happening at once in this particular corridor. What CYMPO is attempting to do is we're attempting to look at the entire corridor from Prescott Lakes Parkway to State Route 69 in Prescott Valley. But what Tammy's point is has to be critically, it really needs to be highlighted. The city of Prescott, to the best of my understanding and working with city staff, has verified that there is development agreements that exist from Prescott Lakes Parkway through what is being called Storm Ranch as the initial development, and then into Yavapai Hills. So we're talking about a 3.5 mile corridor. 1.5 miles of that, I would say, is a completely separate discussion, ironically, than what CYMPO's doing. City of Prescott already has agreements in place to construct at some point 1.5 miles of the road. As an entire corridor, CYMPO will offer a planning alternative that everyone's talking about as a no build option. CYMPO does not have any authority whatsoever to speak on behalf of Prescott and what they will or will not do. So I just want to be clear that there is plating that's taking place, and Tammy in her role as a planner for Prescott has, I believe, worked with both of these developments. And again, that building that is going to move forward, I suppose, at some point, is within the corridor, but that is not up to CYMPO and the region to decide. That's the city of Prescott, their development agreements with Storm Ranch and Yavapai Hills. So long explanation, but I do think there's a lot of confusion right now. And CYMPO would like to help in clarifying some of that confusion, that I know there's a community that wants a no build option, but we need to be careful as to what is already legally agreed upon for a portion of this possible roadway. So I want to be clear about that.
I think, if I may, I think that most of the people that I am in contact with are very much aware of that. So thank you, but thank you for the clarification.
And if I may add on that, you know, you're dealing with two incorporated communities where this corridor lies. So you could have either one of those communities and their council and leadership choose to take whatever results come out of this and proceed with just what lies within their jurisdiction as well. You know, the county is certainly interested in this because it shows that there's regional purpose in this. I'm not going to use the word benefit because I recognize that there's a lot of negatives associated with this road, but the purpose of this regionally, I think, brings the county to the table where we're, you know, a partner in seeing this thing move forward at a steady level. And then it would really be up to, you know, each of those incorporated communities whether they want to pursue something beyond that. I mean, it's possible that you have part of the development driven. You can have the town of Prescott Valley say, well, we see benefit in building what's within our part of it, and it all gets piecemeal together. The idea here with this study is providing a roadmap as to where the incorporated location would be if it were to move forward. And I fully recognize there's a large contingency that sees no roadmap as being the best way forward.
Including an environmental impact.
Of course, and that will come into play, especially if there's federal funding that comes in construction of this. I mean, it's possible that it can be developed strictly with local dollars, and then there's no, you know, the EPA nexus or something like that that brings NEPA into play on it. Then you're really just, it's up to the local jurisdiction as to what they want to do. And my hope is that with appropriate input in this process and with the environmental overview that's being considered in this, it also provides a roadmap for how to deal with environmental.
That would be pretty scary if it were piecemeal and not having some overall wildlife environmental plan.
And I think, you know, with what you have our member agencies involved in this study and a commitment to the environmental overview arm of this study, the idea is that it's paving the way, if you will, for how to step forward on where the environmental concerns are, where our corridors are, that we have underneath knowing this.
May I say one more thing? You're kind of taking on to something that JD mentioned before about wanting to be more at the table. I guess I'm concerned that if EMAC was reviewing projects from other groups, that they may not bring up enough about wildlife corridors and ecological connectivity on their own. And so what I see this group as being that the spearhead for keeping that in the conversation. So if EMAC isn't doing or applying it individually or as a group with their focus, then we see pretty widely that people are kind of unaware of certain things that we would like them to be aware of. We may not come up with a project that addresses what EMAC would like to see.
Can I, and I don't know if it's agenda, but when we were working on the 69 underpass, Number
You
one,
had
we
to bring
were,
that up.
we were 5 years behind. Because that's how ADOT works, they win. The other thing is that it was made clear by Chuck and by others from Game and Fish that you have to have the underpass. But in addition to that, you have to have in place conservation easements or leasing of land so that the wildlife have somewhere to go rather than a parking lot, once they're out of that. And that's one of the glitches that we ran into with the 69 underpass. With this Sundog corridor, if this all goes through, the really positive thing is that with the work that you guys have done with Save the Dells, and we've got that, we've got this huge regional, soon to be regional park that we can feed the wildlife into. So
Spooks up.
in some ways, we're in a much, much better position to be effective in preserving the wildlife through corridors because of the fact that that land is open.
On that side of Highway 69,
I'm sorry.
on that side of Highway 69. Like, for them coming out of the mountains, out of the Bradshaws, how do they get across Highway
Yeah,
69?
yeah, but that's still, I mean, it's been very, very frustrating, sad that we didn't get more there. And maybe with some of what they're doing in terms of, you know, these grants or whatever, maybe CYMPO and EMAC can still find some way we can mitigate.
JD, I think this goes with the next discussion item, the 69 photo. So, Deb, you had a question?
Well, she had an announcement,
Sorry.
that's okay, but I wasn't sure, Madam Chair, when you'd like to address that item, if you want to wait until the end and then go back to, item number 4, or how you'd like to, it's completely unrelated to what we're discussing.
Okay, we'll do it at the end. So make sure.
I have
Go
a
ahead.
comment too, sorry. So this is really important too. I think, you know, the discussion's just right where it needs to be, in my opinion, with what Dan's saying, JD and Joanne. And I want to understand what CYMPO's role is again, as a planning organization, we are seeing what I think Dan referenced as the piecemeal thing that's happening. JD, you also said it. CYMPO as a planning organization is attempting to give the community, EMAC, the greater community, Yavapai Hills, everywhere, the opportunity for input is what we're trying to do. And that's again why we've dedicated to this planning process 25% of our budget of this planning process for this project is just for public input. The greatest concern as a planner is that it would be piecemealed, that the greater public voice would be shut out. And again, CYMPO is attempting to provide a platform for everybody that's been mentioned and more to provide input. I understand that there's a very much of a voice again for a no build option, but as planners, part of it, what we're saying is, gosh, it seems like parts of these are happening. So can we have a more comprehensive description of this corridor? And more specifically, what are the things that are the biggest concerns for the greater community? Wildlife, light, sound, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I just want to keep reminding the group as we move forward what CYMPO's role is in this. And I do think the discussion's really a very valuable discussion. And I just want to keep reminding, again, what CYMPO is attempting to do in this process. So thank you.
Thank you. So is there any other discussion on the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report and Environmental Overview Project?
I just want to address Dan's quick question. So we'll get the presentation materials at the staff meeting. I can disseminate that out to the EMAC. It sounds like we'll want to meet to discuss that, or you guys can individually brainstorm and email me your thoughts. Allison, is there a meeting scheduled for the end of the year?
The next one is actually scheduled for November 28th.
Oh, so that we might just keep that so that we can address.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah, that's good.
Perfect.
Is that's the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
It might be virtual.
I was just
and
hoping
full.
it wasn't gonna be the Friday after.
We're not that cool.
No, the race closed.
I do have one question about the sundog, and I'd like to ask you, Tammy. What is the city of Prescott doing for wildlife corridors through that area, or negotiating with the developer in that area to set up some kind of framework for wildlife corridors, or if the guy would even want to consider them in the future?
Well, at this time, it's just Storm Ranch is the only one that's moving forward, and they're at the beginning.
Right,
So it'd be if Yavapai Hills, that last phase 9 ever starts moving forward again, or someone picks that up. At this time, it's dormant. It has preliminary plat approvals and it's dormant there. So until somebody decides to pick it up to continue it, that's when we would start seeing drawings for the connections either way for them to get to it. But
so right now, the city of Prescott does not have any kind of
we're waiting on this. Everybody's waiting on this.
waiting on this,
Yes.
but no roads are going in until this comes out.
Storm
Until-
Ranch can go forward because they're in the beginning stage. So it's
so
from
they're gonna
Storm
build their
Ranch.
own road?
So they're right at after the roundabout. So they already have approvals from the roundabout of Prescott Lakes Parkway up to their development.
Right,
So the only thing we're looking at, that this study is looking at is from Storm Ranch to the boundary of the Yavapai Hills Phase 9, from the other boundary, because there's already corridor platted through there
through
or
there.
approved,
Mhm.
because that's private property. Then you have from the other side of Yavapai Hills down to Sundog.
Is that the 1.5 miles?
That's the that whole total is the 1.5 on either side of Yavapai Hills.
And that's-
That's what we're looking at, the study's looking at. The part between Yavapai Hills and Storm Ranch is already approved, those corridors. Which the one in Yavapai Hills can be adjusted based on what comes out of the outcome, because it's not final platted, it's just a preliminary plat. So that can change with whoever decides to move forward with that project. At this time, there is nobody that we have heard from. Because they're waiting, I think, on the study to see what comes out.
Can we get copies of those platted maps?
They would be part of the study because they're already provided to the
Oh, the-
CYMPO and ECOM.
Okay, in the study, you mean the Sundog connector?
All that would be part of it.
Okay,
I'll find it for you.
I know, Vinny that's been provided to him previously in the DA and everything.
okay.
Okay. Anything else on the Sundog connector? No, okay. So next is review and discussion of the State Route 69 urbanized corridor master plan. Lindsay, you're up.
Thanks. So there's not too much to
Just get our
discuss
steps in today.
on this item. Just want to keep you updated on the project as it moves forward. So because of, let me get this shared. Because of our schedule with our TAC and our executive board, we had originally intended to have the public, the professional services agreement and the selection of Kittleson approved so that, actually, we're still on course because notice to proceed, our executive board, I'll read the line here. Our executive board did approve our selection of Kittleson and Associates, as well as the professional services agreement that we provided a draft of. What happens now is it now needs to go to the Board of Supervisors for Yavapai County. Once they issue an approval, we can then issue the notice to proceed to AECOM, and then they can start work and we can begin paying them for their work. If they were to start their work before the notice to proceed, they'd be doing it for free. Maybe we can convince them to do that for us. Let me get this shared. The project manager on this for AECOM is Vamshi Yelisetti. His skill set in particular is one of the big reasons why Kittleson and Associates was chosen. He's a master traffic modeler, traffic analysis, traffic modeler. He's from the Phoenix area. So what we see on the screen is the proposed schedule for the SR 69 urbanized master corridor plan. As you can see, project management was initially intended to begin in October because of some scheduling issues with our TAC and our EMAC. That's the only thing that's adjusted a little bit. So the little people there in October will now move over to November. But another reason why Kittleson was selected as the highest scored submittal was because of the sub-consultant they chose in AECom. And AECom, project manager for Sundog Connector, and then them being the sub for this is a really big connection to the two projects. It was really important to us that we very closely align those two projects as far as the management of it, so that there's never a project in a silo. We don't want SR 69 siloed from Sundog Connector. So while the same personnel won't be on they don't have the time to also be Sundog Connector and SR 69, it's still within AECom. So that's a huge plus for us. So like I said, this is scheduled to commence in September of 2023. It could, now that we're starting a little bit later than we might have intended, it could, I guess, go to October. But you'll see that the intent there was to finish at the same time as the Sundog Connector. Not much else to present on this today, but as we just discussed today, clearly the EMAC wants to be involved. You already got input on the scope of work. I don't know if you remember a couple meetings ago, you guys gave me input on our scope, and that was put into the task orders that Kittleson has developed to with our agreement with them. So thank you for your input on that. I hope that it's represented the way that you want, but going forward, we'll hear about SR 69 in every meeting that we have, because it's such a critical plan for us. So Madam Chair, I do welcome any comments or questions.
Anybody have any questions or comments about the State Route 69?
The County Board of Supervisors will, they're the fiscal agent for CYMPO. They'll approve it next Wednesday. It's being heard next Wednesday.
Is it here or?
It's at the press conference. I think I'll be there to defend it if there's questions.
Did it wind up with any kind of mitigation
For the environment,
or the wildlife?
we won't know what mitigations would be needed until they start studying it, but an environmental review is part of their scope. It's in their tasks. So if there's a mitigation needed, we won't know until they get to that part of the project, but us asking them for environmental concerns was part of their scope.
Is it going to be too late for us to give input, or for the public to give input by that time?
This just does the corridor study.
No, it's
So absolutely
the perfect time for it.
plenty of
Yeah, it's not a
opportunity
road.
to be actively engaged in that.
I'm sorry, one more time.
It's just a corridor study, so there's many opportunities,
Okay.
just like with Sundog, to be actively engaged in that, and give input on that.
What was 69? I thought we were too late for any.
So this is 69 from 89 all the way to State Route 169.
Oh,
We're
it's
doing a
not.
study
It's
that-
not-
It's a corridor
it's
study.
not-
89 to 169, it's not that 1 mile stretch by.
Not the
Lowe's.
battle we already lost.
Right.
It's not the battle.
So, there is certainly opportunity to seek out solutions, potential solutions as part of this study. The idea here is to study the corridor, note where the problem areas are, and then also make recommendations as to where we can mitigate problems
Because I know
with
that,
smaller blocks of money, because we know we'll never have the full amount of money to fix the entire corridor from 89 to 169.
So then once you get the study, JD, then if any grant opportunities or anything come up, we have a study in place saying, hey, here's an area where we looked at,
Yeah.
here's a potential problem.
I was
Now
con-
we can apply for grants because we have the study.
I was confused because
thanks
I
for
thought
clarifying.
we were going back to the other
Yeah.
69. Okay, this is great, because there was, and from my personal experience, there was a lot of wildlife fatality, like what they used to call Blood Alley.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks for asking that critical question. Because and that's a point that Vinny and I like to make sure that the region understands. That little 1 mile of widening in front of Lowe's, we decided has taken 10 years and $13 million just to get 1 mile widened. Probably not even to the capacity that it needed to be 10 years ago. That's just the reality of it, so.
And it's missing out on environmental connectivity issues as well.
Yes.
I just hope that the people, 2 of whom are sitting here, are as active in lobbying for the wildlife in that stretch of road as they are regarding the Sundop connector.
From what I've seen, they have this.
Please.
No pressure, Joanne.
Okay. Any other discussion on the State Route 69 urbanized corridor master plan? And we'll see lots of that this next year.
Yeah.
To give input. Okay. Next, review, discussion, and possible action regarding the pursuit of funding for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act.
Yeah, so, a lot of what we've just been discussing today can be discussed here in item 9. So we already have reviewed that part of the IIJA or the bill, same terms for the same thing. So the wildlife connectivity pilot project, we read about that together. So there's funding available, $350 million in the next 5 years. I'm gonna put some information on the board. But also those carbon reduction funds that Vinny discussed. Those are also from the IIJA. And so we've already heard a little bit about it. And I just want to share what I found. There's a new resource that I found that I've really liked, and that is called the ARC, Animal Road. What is it called? Animal Road Connection, I want to say. And they put out a lot of research. They are a private research body. I think that's okay. So this is the funds that we already read about together a couple of sessions ago. So $350 million over the next 5 years. Let me go ahead and zoom in here onto the critical pieces. The first bullet point discusses the importance of competitive projects for these funds being public-private partnership. And that's a lot of what we've been discussing as a group since I first started, at least. I'm interested to see how we can engage private partners in our area to help fill in the gaps that public funds and public efforts are not able to pursue. So what I'd like to start understanding is some of the land ownership and rights of way along our corridors. Maybe there's a way to do public-private partnership if there's a large landowner who's willing to fund some funnel fencing with us. You'll see in some statistics I found that things like signage and lighting do almost 0% good for reducing injuries. It's things like funnel fencing, underpasses, overpasses, and then there was even significant reduction in areas that have seasonal wildlife. So I've lived in areas with heavy fog, and when you're new to the area and you see fog lights, you typically take heed of that warning and slow down, and animals are saved, hopefully. So there was like a 25% decrease in injuries for just those seasonal signing lights and signings. So this is the area that I think in the IIJA bill that we will most likely be pursuing together and trying to brainstorm eligible projects that can fall under this pilot project. But in all, I think this is also the most flexible area that we can pursue because there's a lot of, basically it's favoring innovation. And so I hope in the next year, we as a group can work together to provide recommended solutions for these 2 projects that are coming up. So at least the decision makers have a little bit more to consider when they think about SR 69 and Sundog Connector. There is another one I wanted to show you.
Yeah, but I just,
Please.
and all of these ideas and whatever, and I don't know if this ties in enough, but has there been any discussion regarding dark sky and that impact on wildlife?
We do get a lot of comments about dark sky. Unfortunately, Bryn is not here, but you might be able to answer, Madam Chair. I believe our area is eligible to be a dark sky community, though the policies at the municipal levels may not be in place to require it. But we do have a lot of concern, the comments that we get from folks about the Sundog Connector, they are very concerned about this being a dark sky community. I'm from also similar areas, New Mexico and aliens, we gotta have dark skies, so. I also am very concerned about it as well. We'll see another, point I'd like to discuss for next year. But, we do get a lot of comments about dark sky. I don't know. I am very naive on what it does for habitats and wildlife.
I just know a little
It's all
bit.
about color temperature of the lights. And as long as we watch if there is any lighting of the roadways, that we check the color temperatures, their LEDs. That's where it comes into play. If you have a low temperature bulb, that it's very much provides the light you need, and it doesn't affect the being able to see and wildlife. So that is something we need to take into consideration when reviewing the plan.
Yeah, so it's not a unique
For the
concern.
nocturnal animals, it affects their hunting and their eating or whatever, so.
Well, that makes sense.
Then we'd have to see what comes out of it, and that's something that can come out of the studies, is to have low lighting or minimal lighting. Because some of those may not need lighting on their corridors, so that's something that could come out of the studies. That, like the Sundog Connector, that minimal lighting, that
I would just like to see it expanded to development, because we do have some restrictions on the books that they're not enforced, and it just.
well, and that's at a local level. That's at a local level. That's not something that this group can, because that's the local rules and regulations, zoning ordinances. In regards to counties dark sky ordinance is reviewed at the national level by the National Dark Sky Association. They periodically send their ordinance to get comments on it. For the city of Prescott, the dark sky only applies to commercial and multifamily.
But it's a good point, since we have 2 comprehensive plans that are now up for the county and for the city.
The county already has a very strict dark sky ordinance in the city. It's just all our recommendations. It's not, it's the plan, it's a plan. So you can put goals in to become more dark sky compliant or to become a dark sky community. That is something that could be put in as a goal in the plan. So, but it doesn't, so it is just a plan, a comprehensive plan and general plan is not enforceable. It doesn't change anything. I'm gonna put that out there right now. It does not change anything, but it does set out goals and recommendations for those jurisdictions.
Why have it then if it's not implemented into some of the building codes and whatever? I mean, it just-
You can put that as a goal, that this can happen, and this is the strategy to do that, but it doesn't automatically happen. So it's something from the community that says, this is what we would like to see. And then the jurisdiction creates the goals and implementation strategies of possibly how to do that. And then it's up to the voters to make sure they're implementing that.
So even some of the recommendations from these comprehensive plans have to go to a vote in order to be implemented into building codes and.
Well, they can be considered when the jurisdiction is updating their codes. It's something that can be considered. Building codes are a whole nother animal.
You got a
Those
lot of
are-
work ahead.
So.
I'm not gonna live long enough.
So Lindsay or Dan or somebody, the funding and grant writing you're talking about, is that coming from this infrastructure, or was it Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So that's how I can tie it back to the discussion that we're having. So the funds that would align with our projects that Kittleson and Associates is currently assessing for us are the IIJA funds. The reason why we have this idea is because Safe Streets for All was a huge opportunity for us to develop an action plan to eliminate all road deaths, for example. Excuse me. We as a four-man staff did not have nearly the available hours to align ourselves to be competitive for those funds. And that's really what spurred this. There are a lot of grants that we're missing out on simply because we don't have the manpower administratively to get us to that point. We do, however, have local dollars to spend as a regional body on behalf of our members. So $20,000 to hopefully leverage millions more. It was a really easy decision to make. So Kittleson and Associates is particularly adept at this, especially Phyllis Hugel. So the funds that she's assessing against our projects are these IIJA funds. And so we're already in fiscal year 23 for federal funds, October 1. So what we're actually pursuing is FY 24. So that we can be competitive and ready to start applying by August or so of next year. So even if, JD, to your point of feeling frustrated that we're always behind, there was no way to get ahead of this one. The IIJA dumped on us the problem of way too much money to handle, basically. So we're just trying to get ourselves in a better position to handle the large sums of money that could come our way by next year.
So as you're gonna say, we just don't need to be intimidated by the scope of some of our projects or ideas because there's a lot of money out there and we're in competition, but we're in competition.
Is it possible, I mean, will those funds remain available even if there's a change in political scene?
Yes, yeah, those funds, that is the authorization. So
It was passed by Congress.
every year, you know, they do the new budget. Currently, I think we're still in continuing resolution, but that means that it's as is, it continues on. When you get funds like this, you typically have to spend it within 5 years before they penalize you and take it back. So no, there's no chance of that happening.
And that IIJ funding is spread out over several years. It's not like they passed it and dumped it all in 1 year and you've got to apply for it now. It's spaced out over multiple years.
You know, it's a shame that so much long-term planning, which is beneficial, is affected by each election.
Yep.
Elections have consequences.
That's the reality of it. To that end, I do want to show one screen. It's not going to be the same as what we just saw. Let me move to it. This one. So this is the list of projects that could be applied to animal road crossing projects. This is put out by that ARC group. You'll see at the very top, the one that we're talking about, thank you so much for coming. Wildlife Crossing Pilot Program, $350 million over the next 5 years as we found. This 80% means that the federal share coming to us would be 80%. We'd be responsible for finding the 20% from local match. That being said, there are some advancements in Arizona. The ADOT has a capital outlay available to us now for local match called SMART. I'll keep you updated on that as we get to it. What basically means is Arizona has some funds to help local agencies get those local dollars that are federal dollars because you're not allowed to match federal funds with federal funds. So I'll keep you updated as a group on that because I probably just dumped a lot of things that are gonna make you think a lot, so.
Is their website ARC something?
Yeah, let me see if it's on here. I'm almost positive it's arc.org, but okay, so maybe.
It's arc-solutions.org. I'm over here kind of looking into it a little bit more.
Thank you.
Yes, solutions.
Yeah, I can, it's sort of
Dot
done.
org.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can put it in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah. And so what I wanted to point out is what you're seeing on here is a lot of very heavy highway projects, but you'll see that there's opportunities and eligibility for projects and considerations for wildlife and habitat mitigation. So I'll do some preliminary research for us. We do know that we want to pursue projects within that first thing on the list, wildlife crossing pilot program. One I wanted to point out, however, was this pollinator friendly program. This is special, especially for me. I really love bees and I try to keep bees everywhere I live. So what I'm concerned about is with these sound walls that people want, if Sundog Connector were to come through, how does that impact pollinators and their migratory habits? So I'd like to see, does sound mitigation work even when it's a structure, a staggered wall to allow for, because I know when, you know, the highly controversial border wall came on, that was huge. While maybe terrestrial animals can find a way around it, these bees and things have one pathway.
Wouldn't
They
it be
can't fly
wonderful
up.
if we had some sort of a project connected with these that would actually enhance the pollinators? In other words, have built in the wall something that could help them, and we could get national attention. I know I'm looking, but it's another.
I'm that excited.
And
Not
I
on the
eat a
idea
lot
committee
of
anymore.
food that if it weren't for pollinators wouldn't exist. I mean, you know, it, we're kind of smiling and laughing, but it is a critical issue.
Oh, I agree, yeah.
And it would be a wonderful opportunity to do something innovative.
And engage the community. I have a feeling a lot of people could help us build bat houses or whatever, whatever we think about.
Well,
Go ahead.
as the environmental coordinator for ADOT, this presents other problems.
Okay.
You start having that season, you start having restrictions on road construction and all this kind of stuff.
Because we have an airport nearby.
Right, and the airport nearby.
Right,
track-
right.
But that's lived
So-
under bridges for years without problem. Isn't there one?
Yeah, but.
But
if
we can't
go
attract
to-
them, I guess it's probably.
Right, if there's environmental concerns we have to deal with roosting bats. If they're over a road. I'm not against, you know me, I'm not against what you're saying. I'm just saying. Nothing comes without a price. Is what I'm saying.
So you'll also notice in these things that I have yet to get to in my position at CYMPO, bridge formula is coming to our TAC. They'll start learning about some of the opportunities for bridges, but also that helps to connect aquatic habitats. So if there's there are funding for culverts. These are the kinds of things that little Lindsay might not know about yet, being new to the community. But with the support of the TAC and the support of you guys, I hope to be edified to a lot of these issues. Because especially the aquatic habitats is a little bit murky for me.
Now we're getting into mosquito issues like they're dealing with down in
See
Florida.
what we're dealing with here? And then now you don't want bats? Are you sure? So all that to say is there are a lot of opportunities for us in the IIJA. Like you said, it is 5 years, so we've got a lot of opportunity, but we do want to act quick so we don't lose a whole other year of critical funding. We also don't want to just apply for funds because it's available and then we shelf a project just because that's also not a good stewardship of our public funds. So what I'm presenting to you mostly is consideration for that very first section, but I do think there's opportunities for us to pursue elsewhere, especially with that pollinator friendly program. I did want to stop here, Madam Chair, if I could, and see if Elizabeth Johnson has anything specific to this discussion that you'd want to.
I've just made a couple notes over here to look into some things.
Okay.
We currently, it's kind of like not on topic, but it is kind of on topic. So here in Kingman, down in Bullhead at the Colorado River Nature Center, which is duly owned by us, BLM, and the city of Bullhead, they're putting in a new bridge from the Arizona side to the Nevada side, and we are successfully incorporating bat habitat underneath the bridge with them. So incorporating bat habitat with the bridge, it's not like you're saying, Chuck. I mean, it does come with consequences, but the thing is it can be done. And so with the
Oh, it
pollinator,
can.
what was that?
I said, no, it can. We do it all the time, but I'm just saying there are other considerations once you start having this. Anyway, go ahead.
I've got a lady's name to pass along after we get done with this for pollinators and monarchs. As we start, because I know you said you're super excited about that. And that we've kind of helped with some of the plantings and things that we might be able to wrap her into it. I don't have her card right here with me, but I do have her information in email that I can pass along that we can disseminate later if interested. And then as far as some of the other, like the 350 million for wildlife crossings, I did read in there that states are able to apply for that. So that would be kind of interesting to see if we as Game and Fish, potentially not this year because our Habitat Partnership Committee process application period has closed September 1st, but maybe next year, I'm looking at potentially applying for that with some funding to help with some of the roadway construction or master plans and looking at things like that.
Great.
We love having Game and Fish as a member.
Yeah, we'd love a presentation whenever that's available. Yeah, to see that or take a picture.
With we were talking about the Nature Center bridge down that way.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So my boss, actually DCAP Part, she's the one that's kind of been running that, but I can get a lot of the information for her and off of our shared drives and kind of put something together once construction gets completed. Right now they've pulled the fill for one of the ponds. They're starting to build everything up. And our next step is doing some native tree and shrub plantings right now. So we're trying to decide on the weather and what's the best time to go in to be able to plant that. So yeah, once I get some of that more completed in stages, I can throw a presentation together and present to y'all later.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
that'd
you.
be great.
Thank
That'd be
you.
great.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
And so some other public-private partnerships that we've already discussed, of course, the Heritage Zoo with their sponsoring animals who get hit. What if they also sponsor some fencing projects or something? The Sonoran Desert Coalition or something, while the Sonoran Desert comes right up to our borders, the pollinators, the animals don't stop at the border. So maybe there's a public-private partnership.
Don't forget the Audubon. We have a
And
great
the Audubon.
Audubon chapter here.
I will, yeah, and they're part of our stakeholder group for the Sundog Connectors, so that's fabulous, thank you. I do want to make sure that we give Deb a chance to announce, so I want to present this for your consideration and possible action to pursue these IIJA funds.
Is there anything else about item 9, the IIJ funds?
No, it sounds like our dream come true.
Let me see if there's
Well,
comments.
it can be a dream come true, but the underlying agency has to be willing to apply for these funds. So,
Right.
Chuck, you gotta go back to your office and convince the people in your office and your agency that, hey, a wildlife crossing is in the best interest of ADOT. And then there needs to be match funding for it.
Right.
You can get 80%, but is
Right.
ADOT gonna come up with 20% of millions of dollars? That's the question.
That's the question. Depends on what it does for the community, really.
Right.
But if it's through CYMPO, I mean, a lot of what ADOT does is through CYMPO.
Yeah, but Simcoe doesn't have millions of match dollars. It has,
That's
you know,
well,
hundreds of thousands annually. It's enough to, like, you know, get a little bit of, you know, buy-in from the county, Simcoe, maybe one of your incorporated communities, you know, to pay for some design or something like that. But when it comes to construction, and only 80% of the construction dollars are coming through from the feds, there's still millions of shortfall, and that's the kind of thing that can derail projects.
Right.
Could nonprofit groups donations help with that?
Certainly they can, but we're talking millions of
Yeah.
dollars. And
That's the
nonprofits are lucky if they can come up with tens of thousands of donations.
The other thing is that part about in kind, don't, you know, like if Michael Fan decided that he'd be willing to do something for no cost or
I
whatever.
don't, that depends on the grant, I would say.
Yeah,
whether
that's true.
in-kind contributions
They come with
will
rules.
qualify. So,
Well, still, there's money there
It is.
to give us an
And
opportunity
and it's
to
gotta go somewhere.
exercise, it's gotta go somewhere. And we're kind of set up for that, even though we're loosely organized with it right now, but.
So you're right, it's a dream come true, it's worth pursuing, it's worth talking about. But, you know, each of the member agencies in CYMPO have to understand whether they're going to prioritize this or not. Because the county may prioritize transportation projects and not environmental projects. That's really up to our
They
board.
don't see them as
That's up to our board.
I think the
much was it?
transportation law incorporates them equally.
Yeah. Right.
I really was impressed with some of the things that was in the county comprehensive plan. I mean, it was, you know, like water issues. I mean, I was just snowed. Oberg sent out to his district that little survey, and I took that, plus I wrote another page to go along with it, but I mean, it's wonderful things, and that's why it's so disheartening to know that all of these great ideas aren't translating to something that's in our building codes and kind of institutionalized so that they're more than just, oh, it would be nice.
It's a guide. That's what a comprehensive general plan is, a guide. So you're putting in wants and wishes of the community, the region, and then you set up goals and implementation strategies. So it's up to, you know, you as the voters to make sure that those are getting done. So the county, historically, at least since 2012, was going in front of the board and the commission and giving updates of how the plan is being implemented as part of their joint session. So that's something that they do twice a year. They update the commission and board of what they're doing to implement the plan. The city, we're gonna create something like that too, similar, that we're gonna be showing, and we've been looking at other jurisdictions of what they're doing. They put out flyers, they put things on their website and stuff, what they're doing, specifically to implement their plan. And that's things that we're looking at potentially. We're at the very beginning stages with staff, as well as all our other work.
Maybe you could get some volunteers on something.
We have an 11-member committee. I don't need anyone.
So you know how our
Well, let's get going.
Okay, so let's go back to number 4, announcements and updates. Deb had an update or an announcement.
I don't believe we took action on item 9.
Oh, sorry. Did we have to?
Oh, sorry, I don't know why.
Sorry.
Only if you want to.
I was all panicked about taking action and the whole time we didn't take action.
Okay, we'll go back to Deb. Deb, it's all yours.
It already happened this past weekend. What?
Oh,
Did you
Yeah,
go?
so it's okay. Well, yeah, I production managed it and it went really well. And
Tell us about it.
What was it?
it was a benefit for survivors of sex trafficking. The money, all the tickets went to it. We had enough sponsors to pay for the event and then more. And it's going to the Phoenix Dream Center, which takes in people who come out of the life, and then also locally to the Northern Arizona Dream Center, which is here in Prescott, and then Destiny House Restoration Center. We had a concert by Lisa Mitz Band, and then 4 speakers, which was Missy Sakura from Dan Family Advocacy Center, and then Joshua Dillenbeck, a sexual assault response team detective from Prescott, and then Shauna Sexton from Dream Center survivor, and then Kwang Win also talked about what he was doing at the state level to make the misdemeanors for child grooming a little bit more severe. And then Ken Bennett came on and wrapped it up. And it was a really powerful educational evening. And yeah, I sent it out late to you because I thought of it the last minute. Hey, I got friends, you know. I forgot, you know.
Hey, I know a whole other committee that can show up.
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you for that update. That's really cool. They did.
Oh, I wish I
And
had known.
If you don't mind, Deb, I come from public transit. So you already know that truckers have a huge push towards recognizing trafficking because of the places where they are. It's now huge in public transit. So public transit operators need to be registered in a way that shows that they are passenger transportation services. If they're not, they are subject to being boarded by a police officer just for the purposes of making sure traffic is not happening. And that's especially in our port areas for obvious reasons. So a lot of our providers in Kingman in that area know that they could be pulled over at any time just to have an officer board and make sure everybody's safe. It's a hugely uncomfortable topic of conversation to talk about, but one that we cannot push away. So I've been at conferences where a survivor is talking about horrible things that you just don't want to hear, but you cannot shut your brain off to it. It keeps me aware of what's happening every time I drive past a Greyhound station. So these are just awful, awful topics of conversation, but hugely important and critical. So Deb, I'm glad to hear that there was such an event, and I'm sorry that we must have misunderstood the announcement. We should have pushed that out.
Oh, it's okay, because it
Okay.
was last minute, but if you have any information or a website for what you were just speaking about the truckers, I'd love to have it, because one of the ladies who spoke mentioned that her person, they eventually started to go on the road around the country, and he would sell all around the country, and I wasn't aware of that previously, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's horrifying, and there's nowhere that is immune to it. The most rural city in the world can be a mecca for trafficking, so it's awful, but it's important. So thank you, Deb.
And one thing I'd like to say is that what we did learn from the speakers is that our area is very much on top of looking into this and looking out for people, and that we are very well represented in the state and nationally for what we do here.
Yeah, it's important to know that trafficking doesn't have an age. So awfully young to horribly old, as far as victimizing people, there's no discrimination there.
Thank you all for letting me talk about it.
Thanks,
Thank
Deb.
you.
Thanks, Deb.
Okay.
Brought this party down.
Yeah, that's a horrible thing. That's just a horrible thing.
Okay, I adjourn at
Alrighty.
Thanks, everyone.
11:51.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whew.